The United Nations has held a memorial service for the late Kofi Annan. The former UN Secretary General died at the weekend. He was 80 years old. Current Secretary General Antonio Guterres has laid a wreath at the UN headquarters in honor of Annan. A book of condolences has also been placed at the New York building. The UN flag has been at half-mast since Sunday. Annan's home country, Ghana, is observing a period of mourning. Annan served as UN chief for 10 years until the end of 2006.
We are here to pay tribute to Kofi Annan, one of the best of us, a man who embodied the United Nations values and made us all proud to call ourselves his colleagues. He will always remain vivid in my memory for as long as I live, but not essentially because of the fact he was an extraordinary statesman, a remarkable diplomat, an inspiring leader, but above all, because of his gentleness, of his warmth, of his friendship. He was indeed a good man and a gentleman.
Let's get you more on that now. I'm joined from New York by our correspondent Liling Tan. Liling, a somber day for the United Nations. Can you talk us through Kofi Annan's memorial?
Hey there, Panina. You heard just from the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, that Kofi Annan, the late Secretary General, was a statesman, a diplomat and a gentleman. And that is indeed how he's being remembered here by his UN family, who came together Wednesday morning at UN headquarters here in New York to pay tribute to the man who was also described as the heart and soul of the United Nations. Now, this is one of several events being planned around the world. You mentioned a grieving mourning period in home country Ghana, but here at the United Nations, this private, quiet, small tribute that involved UN personnel, ambassadors and dignitaries will be expanded at a later date, very likely next week, to the General Assembly, and that will involve all 193 member states of the United Nations as they come together to remember the man who has left such a lasting legacy here.
And Liling, what other events has the UN planned this week to honor Annan?
There are many events beyond the parameters of the United Nations, but also at other UN operations around the world. Now, we do know that in Geneva there is going to be a memorial service as well, the date and time to be confirmed, but the UN has a huge presence in Geneva, and many staffers and diplomats there will be coming together to remember the late Kofi Annan. But we are also awaiting word on when the funeral in home country Ghana, in his home country Ghana, will be held with family members. That will be a private affair, and I understand from having spoken to several people here at the UN that the United Nations will wait for that to conclude before it undertakes its own remembrance service here at the General Assembly. But all around the world, Kofi Annan has touched so many people. He had served in peacekeeping before he became Secretary General, and you can be sure that deployments around the world will be thinking of him and remembering the impact that he has had, not just as a peacemaker, but as a peacekeeping official, and also as such an inspiration for so many people who do humanitarian work.
Yeah, he was indeed, Liling. Just talk to us a little bit about his enduring legacy at the United Nations.
Yes, he certainly has left an indelible legacy here, and I cannot emphasize that enough. The outpouring of love and support that we're seeing here out of the United Nations. I've spoken to people who had worked closely with him, people with the press corps, and they talked about a man who was not just personable, but approachable and accessible. He was particularly remembered for a lot of major accomplishments here. He had spearheaded the Millennium Development Goals. I don't know if you recall that, Panina, back in believe it was 2000, the 15-year targets to address poverty, hunger, and a wide range of challenges facing the world at the time. And that has been followed by the ongoing sustainable development goals that we see now. Now, Annan was also the man who galvanized countries and governments to take on HIV/AIDS to try and end that epidemic. And he's also remembered, I mentioned earlier, his work with the peacekeeping department. He is particularly held warmly by the department because of his time there. But also, when he won the Nobel Peace Prize with the United Nations back in 2001, he donated the funds from that award to a memorial here at the United Nations to remember the thousands of peacekeepers who were killed in the line of duty. So he has certainly been a remarkable figure here, but his tenure at the United Nations hasn't been without controversy. Perhaps some of the shortfalls or failures, if you may, have been brought up in the past few days, particularly the genocide in Rwanda of the 1990s, the Srebrenica genocide in 1995, and of course the Iraq War, which had pit the UN against the Bush administration after it proceeded to invade Iraq without the backing of the UN Security Council. And Kofi Annan had called that move illegal at the time. So while he was perceived to be always dignified, elegant, gentle, he was also known to put his foot down where he felt things needed to be addressed or where he felt he needed to oppose certain moves being taken. So in many ways, he's remembered perhaps more as a general than a secretary in that role of Secretary General, but he was much loved and he will be very much missed here.
He will be indeed, Liling. Thank you very much for joining us, Liling Tan in New York.